Welcome to Primetime. This president went to Florida and warned people about an obvious danger.
So I just want to thank everybody here. Be careful a little bit tonight. It's a pretty big storm. I don't know if it's going to be a hurricane or not, but it's a storm. It's significant.
It was good for him to go and mention a potential hurricane, but he said nothing to them about the catastrophe that is already hitting them this very second. Standing in front of a maskless crowd, all jammed in together, including law enforcement behind him, also close together, no masks anywhere. You tell me that this is a man who gives a damn about people getting sick, if he is going to sit there and say nothing. And in Florida, of all places, that state just set a record for the 4th straight day for COVID deaths. Even with their suspect reporting about pneumonia deaths that they called non-COVID related, hiding hospitalizations and other chicanery, they're still drowning in bad data. Mr. President, how do you find any peace knowing that you stood there and you didn't set those people straight? Do you really think being president is just an accolade? Do you really believe you have no duty to these people, taking this risk in front of your face? You really don't think that you're one of the reasons why they have no masks? That they would pack into a place when the virus is all over the state? And if you really do have no sense of duty, have you no shame that you would put people in this kind of position of risk? But of course, I'm talking to myself, aren't I? We know the answers. Now, he may not know the answers, but we do. Mr. Trump is all about his interests, not yours. All me, no we. That's why he attacks Dr. Fauci and has his state TV pals do it. I know he said a few days ago that Fauci's his top guy. But if that's the truth, why is he still having his dogs go at the good doctor? Did you see this from just today?
Well, 500,000 protesters on June 6th alone.
Yeah.
I'm just asking that number of
No.
people. Does it increase the spread of the virus?
Crowding together, particularly when you're not wearing a mask, contributes to the spread of the virus.
Should we limit the protesting?
I'm not sure what you mean. How do we say limit the protesting?
Does the government limit the protesting?
I don't think that's relevant.
And we know the protests actually increase the spread of the virus. You've said that.
I said crowds. I didn't say specifically. I didn't say protest do anything.
So the protests don't increase the spread of the virus?
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth.
Look, he has said, and we've all said, yes, the protests increase the risk of spread. Jim knows this. You know what else does? No masks. You know what else does? Denying the pandemic and calling it a hoax for weeks and weeks and weeks. You know what else does? Not helping out with contact tracing and testing. And Jordan knows every one of these things. I know Jim Jordan. You change the R after Trump's name to a D, and he'd be all over it. Jim Jordan tore into Democrats this week to lay off Bill Barr. Let Barr answer the questions. Come on, man. Let's stick to the point of this hearing. That line of entrapment-style questioning from the GOP congressman, we know he did it for one reason, and it's not his constituents. It's a constituency of one. El Presidente, El Jefe, the boss. And of course, he got the pat on the head that he so desperately seeks. Great job by Jim Jordan, tweeted President Trump. Great job attacking the man you said is your top guy? The guy you said you like? The guy you said you work with so closely? You like that somebody went after him pretending that Fauci is the guy who decides what we cancel and what we don't? Shameless. But I'll tell you what is truly shameful. We topped 4.5 million cases today. We are going the wrong way for the wrong reasons. The CDC now projects we're going to reach more than 173,000 deaths by August 22nd. So that is bad, period. But there is also some good new information that we have for you to help you figure out what the risks are and what we're all going to face at one point or another. Let's bring in the chief doctor, Sanjay Gupta, to break down the new things we've learned. Sanjay, great to see you, brother. School. It's all we're talking about in my house. My kids go to private school. I'm not
Mine too.
happy with the process. I'm not happy with what I'm being told. I think this hybrid model, a few days in, a few days out, is the worst of both. So you create chaos at home and you expose them to virus in the classroom. I don't get it. But I do get this. We have to pay attention to this CDC report about hundreds that were infected at a Georgia sleepaway camp. Now, do you believe that this is kind of an analog to what we have to worry about with schools?
I do, Chris. I think that this is a very significant finding, and I should point out I know this camp well. We were following the story of this camp all along. Should they open? Should they not reopen? It was a big deal here in the newspapers because a lot of kids know this camp. It's a YMCA camp. A couple things that really struck me about this. First of all, there were 600 kids that went to the camp. They were there for basically 5 days, including orientation. Camp counselor gets sick. Camp counselors are wearing the masks, not necessarily all the attendees, the campers. Camp counselor gets sick, they send him home, and then they decide to basically close the camp down over the next several days. And what do they find? Let me show you here. First of all, we talk a lot about testing. Not everyone could get tested. But out of the people that could get tested, they find that the young people, and I have the ages here, between 6 and 10, 51% of them became infected. Between the ages of 6 and 10. So these are some of the youngest campers. Between 11 and 17, 51%. Between 11 and 17, 44%. And between 18 and 21, 33% of the people that were there got COVID.
Now, why? Was it the camp wasn't following the right rules?
Yeah, I think there's two things. First of all, there were some specific CDC guidelines in terms of everyone wearing masks.
Yeah, you can put them up.
Making sure there's proper ventilation within the various cabins. Windows were closed, and there was a lot of people who were doing these types of activities where you were putting a lot of droplets into the air. Same as schools.
Yep.
Same as schools, and I can tell you, Chris, that a lot of these kids are the same kids that go to the schools in this area where I live. So this was a huge concern and a bit of a trial balloon in terms of what would happen in schools. I think the fact that young kids were actually the most significant percentage that got infected, I think was worth noting. And we also realized that a lot of these kids were spreading it to each other.
Right. So now we
one
give them
camp counselor.
It's not school.
And then all these kids.
It's not school as an analog because unless you're going to boarding school, sleepaway school, school's just during the day. These guys were sleeping there at night. Now, the 51% in that younger age range, that leads us into the next piece of research that we have to deal with. The president keeps saying, well, don't worry about them because that 51%, they don't communicate the virus to other people. They don't spread it the way other people do. Now, there was another study that the president has to know about that says that is BS. That once you get over the age of 10, people transmit the virus at that age the same as they do at our age. True?
That's true. So that was a really good study. It was done out of South Korea. They looked at these kids, 10 to 19, and traced the contacts, and said, look, how much are they actually spreading? And just like you said, they find that kids between the ages of 10 and 19 were spreading just like adults. What was also interesting about that study, Chris, and subsequent studies, is that we really don't know about kids younger than 10. For the most part, you think about it, Chris, they've largely been home since the middle of March. They haven't had a lot of contacts to trace, so we really don't know. But then a study comes out that says they carry a lot of the virus, the genetic material for the virus, in their noses. They carry 10 to 100 times as much of these virus material in their noses as compared to adults. That's significant. You superimpose that on the camp study that the CDC published. A lot of kids are spreading to each other, admittedly in this camp environment, not necessarily a school environment. Still, they are spreading it, Chris. Mm-hmm. That is the concern. They are spreading it to each other. And are they going to spread it to people at home, to their parents, to grandparents, to other people in the community? That is an unknown right now, but the evidence is continuing to mount. We're learning together. There's a humility that's necessary. We've said that since March, but we are learning that young kids may be more likely to spread than we realize.
All right, two other quick things. The first one involves both of us as well. So plasma, this isn't news if you've been following this, but they've done more research on the benefit of plasma from people like me who've been sick and have the antibodies to help people who are sick. Now, a lot of people don't want to do this, Sanjay. They've been reaching out to me. I heard it's too long. I heard it could be dangerous. I heard that they take out too much of your blood. I think there's some demystifying we have to do here. And I think that you and I should do the story where you can come and be somewhere near me for when I faint because we both know I'm going down if I have to give blood one more time. But what should people know about giving plasma, other than to not be like me when the needle goes in?
I'll catch you. Don't you worry, Chris. I've done that.
Have
for
a
you before.
pillow.
I carried you on my back.
I
I'll do it
know.
again.
I know. Go ahead.
Well, here's what I would tell you. This is very interesting, and I'll preface by saying this is not a peer-reviewed study. We reported a lot of stuff lately in this fast-moving pandemic that is not yet peer-reviewed. So let me just disclose that. Having said that, this was very interesting findings if they hold up. That basically, in patients who were really sick, Chris, these are hospitalized patients, patients who are severely ill. They gave some of these patients this convalescent serum. So it's basically the antibodies from the blood of someone who has recovered. And what they found, again, in this non-peer-reviewed study, was that it basically decreased the likelihood of mortality by about half. They found around 25% of people were dying in the severely ill group, but then people who got this convalescent plasma, about 13% of those people died. It wasn't a panacea, it wasn't a cure necessarily, but it seemed to make a huge difference. You're basically giving the antibodies from somebody to somebody else and hoping those antibodies actually get to work.
Right.
They get to work at actually attacking the virus and preventing it from continuing to replicate, and it seems to work. And Chris, look, we talk a lot about a vaccine, but the therapeutics like this, we need to be paying more attention to them.
Right.
Because I think they could be a bigger deal. They could be the bridge to a vaccine, if
And
you
this
will.
we already
And
know
that might
we
be
have.
a long bridge.
Right, and we have, look, all
And
you have
this
to do
we
is,
already know we have.
right, and we have to just donate blood. Basically, that's what it is. There really is not much more. I've looked into it. And I have to tell you, here's the biggest reason to do it if you've been sick. We all know how great it would feel for us to make something good come out of something that was so bad. I'm still dealing with
Yes.
it. My bloods are all still screwed up. I'm still dealing with different possibilities. But I know I have a ton of antibodies. I just got tested this past week. Ton of IgG antibodies. So we'll do it together and take people through it. One other thing that was really interesting to me until I asked my wife about it, which goes with a lot of things that I think I know before I speak to my wife. But she lost the smell and taste. Harvard comes out with a study saying that's okay. Turns out the virus doesn't attack the olfactory cells, the cells that control, but it's the neurotransmitter cells around them. So it will come back, you'll be okay. That's what the study is suggesting, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's basically it, Chris. And I know you like new words. Anosmia is the word that is referred to loss of smell.
A schnosmia? A schnosmia?
It's not anosmia. Anosmia. It's good. So, but this is a really important finding because that's been a big question. And by the way, did Christine get her sense of smell back?
So here's the
ultimately?
thing. Here's the thing. She did. Now, this is just one person, okay? But I know this for a fact, all right? She lost it. It came back. And then it went away again a few weeks later. And now she has a altered taste. Things taste putrid to her sometimes. And we're working with the doctors to try to figure out why. And she's not the only person who has said that. She's been reaching out and getting feedback similar.
I think that this study should be some good news for her and for a lot of people who lost the sense of smell.
That it will come back.
First of all, loss of smell, that it will come back. The loss of smell was a very predictive symptom for this COVID-19 disease. I mean, you typically think of cough and fever, and those are there too, but loss of smell ended up being a pretty reliable predictor. But just as you said again, Chris, we kept thinking that, look, this must mean that the virus is actually attacking the neuronal cells that are responsible for smell. Turns out that's not the case. Those cells were largely spared. It was more the supporting cells that allow those cells to do the work. What that means is it makes sense that you lose smell, but it also makes perfect sense that it should come back. This should not be a permanent sort of deficit that somebody has.
And it's a great piece of evidence as a tell because, come the fall, cold and flu season is going to be on us. And a lot of people are going to have fevers. A lot of people are going to have runny noses. A lot of people are going to have respiratory distress. And won't always be COVID. But when this loss of smell and taste comes, you have better percentages of it being COVID. So it's a good indicator for our clinicians. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, I don't know how you're keeping up the work rate that you are, but thank God you are.
Hey, anytime for you, Chris.
Right.
Have a great
And I'll
weekend.
buzz you. I'll buzz you over the weekend, and we'll figure out how to do this story.
Okay,
All
let's
right,
do it.
about the
Absolutely.
plasma. So we'll show people, and then they'll feel better doing it. Because if my wimpy ass can go through it, they'll do it as well. All right, have a good weekend. I'll talk to you this weekend, Doc.